All right. Is Mark Hudson here?
Yes, present. Yes, I'm present.
Okay. All right, this is really weird working on 2 different computers. All right, and we have Jonathan there. All right, and Nicole McCleary's there.
Yeah.
All right, and Tony Garcia's there.
I am here.
Right, we have Mike there. Is Jeff on the call at all?
Yeah.
No? Okay. All right. Gina Evans? Thank you. Leland?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
All right. And Griselle is on the phone. All right. So I think that is it for our attendance today. Oh, we have Mike English on the call as well.
Yes, thanks.
All right. So I think that is it as far as the attendance. And I have a copy of this as well that I can send out for the clerk. I guess, Mike, we can go ahead and get going on the agenda.
Sarah, I'm sorry, Sarah, this is Griselle at DOH. Nicole Sutton is also here from DOH, but she does not have a camera.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order. First order of business on the agenda is if there's any public comment. Anyone here from the public who would like to speak today?
And Mike, can you just make sure you speak up? I know there's microphones in there, so it can be a little hard to hear.
Where is the microphone? Is it built into
The microphones are the saucer-shaped discs on top of the gray tables. So if you could project your voice towards the gray tables and towards those microphones, it would be a big help. Thank you.
well, the problem is the plexiglass in between me and those, so I'll try to speak up. Hopefully you can hear me. So is there anybody that would like to speak to public comment today? I don't see anybody in the room. I don't know if there's anybody online that's called in.
I do not see anybody online.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the first action item is the approval of the minutes from the October 18th meeting. As everybody has a chance to review those, and does anybody have any amendments or questions about the minutes from the October meeting? Move approval of the minutes. Okay, I got a motion for approval. Do I have a second? Second?
Who
Who made the motion in the second? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe when you guys make a motion, you can raise your hand so that they can speak.
I need them to speak and identify who they are for the record, please.
Okay, so the motion is by Lynn, right? Yes. Seconded by Alex. Hear that?
Could the chairman repeat that, please? Just who the two were?
Yeah, the motion was made by Leland, second, and the second was by Johnson Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Leland made the motion and Jonathan Scott seconded it.
I got that, thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions. All in favor? Are we gonna do a roll call, or do we do that just as a group?
We can do if whether or not anybody's opposed to it.
Okay, so presuming everybody's in favor, is there anybody that's opposed? Please say so now. All right, seeing none, we'll presume that the passes unanimously. The first action item is the TIP amendment, and that'll be presented by the MPO staff.
All right. Vishak, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, TAC committee members. My name is Vishaka Shibraman, MPO staff for the record. And today I'm going to be presenting TIP amendments that came to us from FDOT for the month of November. Sarah, can you please advance? Today I'm going to be presenting 3 amendments for the current effective current effective TIP. The first amendment is for the HART FTA discretionary bus and bus facilities program funds. The second one is for wrong way vehicle detection system at various locations along the highway interstates at Hillsborough County. And the third amendment is for corridor lighting at various locations in Hillsborough County. Next slide, please. I will go detail one by one. So the first amendment it's a new project. It's the FPN number is given here. It's for the FTA discretionary bus and bus facilities program. What this project does is FTA had awarded this funds as part of their buses and bus facilities program to assist HART with the purchase of zero emission electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. This will bring the infrastructure up to standards, and also it'll help HART to improve access, mobility, and services for all their service within the Hillsborough County. And it's cost efficient and electric buses. So this amendment will add 5.485 million as capital funds to FY 2021. As you can see here, the FTA portion is half of it, which is about 2.7 million. And the local portion is 2.7 million, which is shared by HART and TICO. So this is the first project. Next slide, please. This is just to show you the detail about the comparative report, which actually shows how the funds we have added. And you can see the details that the funds, as I mentioned before, are added to FY 2021 for about 5.485 million. The funds is split as local funds and FTA costs. And you can see the project number, name, and the details for that. Next slide, please. The second project is for wrong way vehicle detection system at various locations along I-275, I-75, and I-4. This is again an FDOT project that will install wrong way vehicle detection system at the entrance and the exit ramps at the following locations that FDOT has identified. I will show you the map of the locations in a minute, but just to point out these locations, there are 2 along I-4, one at I-75 and Fowler. There are actually 4 systems installed at all the 4 exit and entrance ramps at the north and the south exits. At I-275, the 4 locations are Bird Street, Bush Boulevard, Scott Street, and Ashley Drive. This is part of the countermeasure implementation plan, what FDOT has for wrong way vehicle detection system. And what this does is it has cameras and signs. So it alerts that it triggers an alert and sends to the nearest traffic management center, and they will get notified if a vehicle enters on the wrong way. Again, to give you the details, that this amendment adds about 1.2 million in construction funds to FY 2021. Next slide, please. This is the map which shows the various locations. There are 10 of them, and 4 at I-75, 4 at 275, and 2 at I-4. Next slide, please. Again, this is to bring you the comparative report. As you can see in the comparative report, that the funds added is ACID, which is Advanced Construction of Safety Intersection Crashes, and it adds up to 1.2 million, and it is added to FY 2021 as construction funds. It's part of the Vision Zero project for the LRTP reference. Next slide, please. The third amendment is also a new project, which is for adding various lighting in the corridors at various locations in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough FDOT has identified 5 corridors along Hillsborough County to help with the lighting retrofit at the existing poles. Previously, the lights used to be the yellow lights, and they are upgraded to the latest LED technology, which will help with better safety. And these locations were specifically added based on nighttime crashes, and it helps to mitigate that. The various locations as shown below are Hillsborough Avenue from Dale Mabry to 275, 301 from Baum Road to Bloomingdale Avenue, 674 College Avenue from US 41 to State Road 60, and US 301. This amendment will help to add about 1.835 million to construction funds in FY 2021. Next slide, please. I'm having a slight feedback here. I don't know if it's at my end, but please let me know if there's any discussion and you can't hear. This is again, I would like to bring up the comparative report to show that about 1.835 million is advanced construction of HSP projects, which is the Highway Safety Intersection Program funds added in FY 2021 as construction funds. With this, I will move on to the last slide, which will show my request. Next slide, please. I would, this is my recommended action, is to request you to approve this TIP amendments and forward it to the board for approval. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for anyone? About anyone? Okay, Nicole, have a question?
Yes.
I just wanted to know for the wrong direction indicators, were those 5 areas of instance where that happened? Do you know?
Nicole, I just understood the 5 locations part. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the question clearly.
What's that you brought up there? What was the response?
This is your technical advisor person. I just want to tell everyone that if you're not speaking, you need to have your microphone muted because we're getting feedback. So the only person who should have their mic on is the person who's speaking one at a time. If everyone has their mics on, we're not going to be able to hear anyone.
Nicole, can we please get back to your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know for the wrong way direction indicators, if those were areas where there was high incidence of that, why those specific areas were selected.
Was it for the lighting project?
No.
For the wrong way driver project.
So for the wrong, Sarah, I could not still understand Nicole's question. Can you please direct it again to me?
I think her question is, why were those locations selected for the wrong way driver amendment?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your question. I just had a conversation with an FDOT staff member. This is probably based on, like I mentioned earlier, it was a countermeasure plan. It's a countermeasure implementation plan, and FDOT has information about that in their website. I can either send you that information, and this is based on research, and I do also have the project plans in addition to it, but I believe these are based on what would be the high crash locations, but I do not have any statistics or any further information on that. I just know that the locations and the map and the project plans. So if you need why these locations were chosen, I could try to find out that specific answer and get an answer to you back. Would that help?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? I'm seeing none in the room. I don't know if anybody outside is, but seeing no further questions, can we have a motion?
This is Jay Collins. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the TIP amendments number 15, 16, and 17.
Okay.
Jonathan Scott, second.
Okay, so Jay made the motion and Jonathan seconded.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody opposed to this motion? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item is the Plant City Transit Plan. That's a shop is doing that one as well.
Hello again. This is Vishaka again with the second presentation. Today I'm going to be presenting on the Plant City Transit Study Project update. Can we move to the next slide, please? This is a study what the MPO had initiated back in January of this year, and this is a short study. Now we are at the almost at the end of the study phase, and I would just like to give you project updates so far, starting with an overview. Next slide, please. I'm still getting some feedback. If there's anybody else who can mute, that will be helpful. Thank you. Again, I would just like to provide a background of the study location. If you can see here, it is a study area which shows city and also the unincorporated Plant City within the Hillsborough County limits. So as you all know that Plant City is one of the fastest growing areas within the Hillsborough County by percentage as per the MPO's population projection. We also identified some major corridors being Collins Street, Park Road, Alexander Street, Reynolds Street, and Baker Street. Next slide, please. I would like to also tell you the study purpose and outcomes. Just briefly here, the study will be exploring two kinds of transit options in Plant City. One is for the transit circulator, which will provide operations within downtown Plant City. And the second one is about an express route or a limited stop service, which will operate from Plant City to Tampa. And we will also explore at the possibility of providing a service to Lakeland in the future, but that will require further coordination. We evaluated the routes and services based on the cost, potential ridership, and the performance measures. I will be going over them in detail. At the end of the study, we will identify the service areas, which are the current areas and the future growing areas to meet the demand for growth. The study will recommend a set of final proposed alternatives, what we would be presenting to HART and Plant City, and also the MPO committees and the board, and the final decision will be made after this report with talks from Hillsborough, HART and Plant City. Next slide, please. Again, as I mentioned, we started the study back in January. We've had several stakeholder focus group meetings throughout the study. We are also been presenting to the committees and the HART and Plant City. The final part of the study will be a transit study project report that will be, we are currently working on that in a draft form, and then it will come to the board for final approval. Next slide, please. Because we wanted to explore what was available in the past, the study looked at the previous transit service what existed, and I will go over them. Next slide, please. As some of you might know, Plant City had two kinds of transit services in the past at different points of time. The first one was a Strawberry Connector, which operated from 2001 to 2005. It was initially run by HART, and later the city took over it until 2008. The highest annual ridership was almost 47,000 in the peak of 2006-07 years, but finally they had to cut it down due to cost constraints. The second service was an express service, which is called the 28X East County service, which operated two services initially, and then it was cut down to one from Plant City to Tampa from 2010 to 2017. And it also saw the peak annual ridership around 2012. Later, it had to be cut down when HART had to do its comprehensive operation analysis and redo their budget. So currently, if you notice in the map that the yellow line is what shows the 28X, and the other four colors around the downtown are what shows the Strawberry Connector. But currently, there's only Plant City Strawberry Stretches Connector, which is the red line which operates in Polk County, but it operates along the County Line Road. Next slide, please. The study explored the commuting characters and the existing conditions to know what exists today and what will be for the future. So next slide, please. Among other factors, what we explored, we looked at the commute patterns in the zero-car household. It can be seen that there were 84% of the workers who drove alone. 18% of the residents travel less than 10 minutes to work, which means that they live very close to their place of work. The mean travel time is approximately 24 minutes, and about 2% of the households have no vehicles. So if you look at it in the map, you notice that the areas with darker colored shades are the ones which show that the people with zero car households, and the darker the color means more households. These are the people who are in need of transit the most. So upon analysis with the MPO's communities of concern map, which is any people falling under any of the categories being minority, racial, limited English proficiency, or one of these categories, this map also lined up almost according to this communities of concern map. So these people, it means that they also need transit the most. Next slide, please. So currently there is only Sunshine Line which operates service within Plant City, and in the map what shows is the origins and the destinations of some of the trips. They are mostly for doctor appointments, medical trips, grocery, and family, childcare, community center, etc. But people have to be qualified for as low income to be able to ride the Sunshine Line. So that's another constraint. Next slide, please. A main part of the study was the outreach efforts, what we did. So I will go over them in detail. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we had community stakeholder meetings at various points of the study. The first one was in February 2020, which was conducted in Plant City Hall. We had over 20, we are close to 30 attendees, and we helped to identify the stakeholder group. The second meeting was unfortunately a virtual meeting in May 2020. And an initial set of alternatives was presented to the committee through a GoToWebinar meeting. Following the meeting, we also distributed a survey which had around 120 responses, and that helped to shape the alternatives better. A third meeting was conducted in a virtual public meeting as like an open house format. You can notice that in the right side that shows a screenshot of the website, what we had set up. And if you know that, if you can see in there, we did have information on the various alternatives and different sections, and people could provide their feedback on each alternatives, almost like a survey. And that ran from August 24th to September 13th for about 3 weeks. There was also a live presentation to help people navigate the website. Next slide, please. So coming to the alternatives analysis, this is what the study found out as the best alternatives, and I will go over them in detail. Next slide, please. The study identified 3 transit goals, which was developed based on the stakeholder meetings and the meetings with the public. One was to implement useful and reliable service within Plant City for people who need it the most. Use transit as an option for incentivizing downtown development, and also to connect Plant City to Tampa and possibly to Lakeland in the future. Next slide, please. First, I will go over the circulator analysis. The study explored 2 options for circulator. Next slide, please. This is just a basic assumptions that we evaluated the service using a basic bus. For each bus would be a $600K capital cost, and it also includes a paratransit additional cost. The buses would operate from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Next slide, please. This is the map which shows the 2 kinds of, the 2 options that were explored. The one on the red one is the option A, which connects Strawberry Festival grounds. It goes east to downtown and then further south to Raymond Parkway. It connects to the Walmart and loops back to the downtown. It's operated by 1 bus every 60 minutes. The next option almost splits the first option into 2. One would be the east-west connection, and one would be the north-south connection. And it's slightly it covers slightly more area because it passes through some of the residential and the other neighborhoods what people had suggested from the various stakeholder meetings. So it'll be operated by 2 buses serving different routes, but that would be more faster service. And I'll show you the performance measures. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. This slide shows the cost comparison. If you can see here, option A is operated by 1 bus, and the frequency is about 60 minutes. It serves about 10,000 people and 5,000 jobs. But option B is operated by 2 buses, so it's slightly more expensive, but the frequency is more. So it'll also provide access to more people and more jobs. And the other statistics are the ones which are shown based on the how it would serve the poverty, minority, and seniors. Next slide, please. A third option was evaluated based on further meetings, and this had some interest when we had the stakeholder meetings, which was an on-demand point-to-point service, kind of used the Hearts Downtowner as the case study. But this service has approximately $1.6 million per year operating cost, but it serves about 14,000 people. And currently it's run by a grant, which is received from a local match. And the cost per passenger is about $5, but that cost is borne by Heart. It's a rail service. People can use an app to call the taxi, and the average wait time is about 15 minutes. Next slide, please. The second set of options what we explored was the limited stop alternatives. Next slide, please. The assumptions are similar to the previous one, but it would be operated by 2 buses, and it has Monday through Friday a different time, and Saturday, Sunday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 options what we explored. The first one, I will go over them as the blue line, which is the Route 28X, which actually shows the exact route what was operated by the previous service, 28X, what operated in Plant City in the past. It stops outside of downtown at a park and ride location around Tosasa Road near the church. And from there, it connects via I-4 through Selman Express, through Brandon, and comes on 75 through Selman Connector to downtown. The second one is a route that operates along I-4. It connects Plant City to Tampa through I-4. The third one is a similar one which operates along MLK, and the next one is a combination of I-4 and MLK. So it operates partially along MLK from Plant City, and then from there it takes I-4 and then it connects to downtown. The fifth option is a Route 38 extension. So currently Tampa has Heart operates the service. If you notice in the map, there are different connections. So this route operates currently till Mango Walmart. From there, this route, the fifth route, would explore the option of adding the service from that connection to downtown Plant City. And I will go over the costs in detail. Next slide, please. Please remember that these costs are only planning level cost estimates, and they do not represent the final cost. So if you notice here, the amount of the operating costs vary roughly between 900K to 1.2 million. The frequency is also varies between 45 to 60 minutes and operated by 2 buses. The distance is pretty much the same except for the extension, which is a lesser distance. The number of people served by different routes, I will give you a minute to see this. Some of the routes serve more people than some of the other routes. These were only explored as different options what could be the possible routes. And the number of jobs are also varies for each of the 5 options. But the cost, so this is what will be used as a comparative measure for the performance measures. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide. The other option what we also explored in addition was the Amazon, was the Lakeland Connection, but that would have to be based on future talks with Citrus Connection. What this route is explored, this route will operate along MLK with a stop at the Amazon Distribution Center along County Line, and from there it will connect to downtown Lakeland to where Citrus Connection would operate. Next slide, please. And again, I would like to show the costs and the other comparative measures for it. It will connect to Circulator and the others limited option routes. It will have a lesser cost because it's a shorter distance. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned earlier that we did have 2 surveys at different points of the study. One was to the stakeholder committee, but there was also an open to the public. survey. We did distribute it through our social media and also through the forwards through our stakeholders. They were passing the information to some of their connections. And the second one was a virtual open house. What we learned from some of these survey was that people were generally in support of the service. It would open up more opportunities for jobs and economic growth. It would provide, but there was a challenge of providing reliable connection and coverage for all the services. The public also perceived that they needed a better transit hub connection at Plant City downtown, and that would need more comfortable facilities and shorter waiting times. They also preferred that the buses serve more frequency and more time. The current development pattern could support transit, but the transit needs more density and intensity that will be fulfilled, that will help to provide more service. Some of the responses from the surveys were the most frequent trips within Plant City were shopping along Redmond Plaza, medical appointments and areas, the hospital and work. And some of the most preferred locations to Tampa were downtown, International Airport, Brandon, and USF area. Lakeland was also one of the popular desires for people. With that, I move on to the next slide, which will be any questions, and I would request the committee to support my study, and if you can recommend it to the board for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Whether it be those here or online? Did Jay have a question?
Thank you, Mike. Vishaka, one quick question for you, and I know that Mr. Hudson is also on the line, and I was wondering what kind of input the city of Plant City, particularly the planning department, had in the study.
Thanks for that question, Jay. So if you notice that Hart and MPO were the main project managers, Nicole McCleary from Hart was my co-project manager. So we did most of the work. But at every point throughout the study, we were presenting to the City Council, the Planning Board, and also we had some of the representatives from Plant City who were giving their input. And like I mentioned in the study, all these routes are just at their request. This study entirely was done at their request. So they did have input, but the final decision would need further discussions with Hart, and they would be the authority to make that call.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can we have a motion?
This is Jonathan Scott, motion to approve.
There is a motion by Jonathan Scott. Do we have a second? Second by Nicole McCleary. If there's no further questions.
I'm sorry, who had the second? I didn't catch that.
Nicole McCleary.
Thank you.
And for our protocol, is there anybody who objects to this motion? All right, seeing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Vision Zero Corridor study, and I don't know if that's Wade or Lisa or both.
All right, I guess Wade or Lisa, who's starting this one off?
Hi, Sarah, it's Wade. I'll be handling both. Would you like me to present from my screen or just say slide?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make you presenter if you want. Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right, just 1 second. It should be coming up. Are you all able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you all. I'll be presenting the Vision Zero Corridor studies. We had 8 of them. These are focused on the Paint Saves Lives part of the Vision Zero action plan. Low cost, easily implementable strategies. Just to go over the 8 corridors, you can see them here on the left. Bruceby Downs, Fletcher, Lynn Turner Road, Sheldon Road, Gibsonton Drive, Mango Road, 15th Street, and 78th Street. We've worked pretty closely with Hillsborough County staff, and this is the first application of the MPO Speed Management Action Plan. So we had a little bit different public outreach approach than we're used to. We did surveys for each one of the corridors. We distributed fact sheets along those corridors at bus stops, at restaurants, various different places. Distributed the survey via all of our constant contact lists. And then here we are presenting to you all again after coming in September, but coming back for your review. So just a little bit of look at that public outreach process. These are some of the flyers. We had the crash history for the corridor, and then a link to the survey on them. So starting with Bruceby Downs, I'll go through some of the recommended improvements. This corridor description, it is a 6-lane corridor, 45 miles an hour, 40 to 50,000 cars per day, so a busy route. Just a little look at the crash data. You can see that the big ones were Fowler, Fletcher, and Bears in terms of some of those, in terms of total crashes, that is. And then just a quick look at some upcoming projects that were that are coming up in that area. New traffic signals at Campus Hill Drive and Richard Silver Way, and the construction of a new 10-foot sidewalk along the east side of Bruceby Downs along the university, as well as a 7-foot buffered bike lane on both sides. Just a little bit of a look at the public outreach here. Obviously, the turning movements are a big concern, and walking and biking, as well as speed on that corridor. So corridor-wide, some of the recommendations. One is lowering the target speed to 35 miles per hour and 40 from Fletcher to Bears. That will be accomplished, or is proposed to be accomplished, by having a dedicated shared use path, channelization of pedestrians to those protected crossings, and reducing the width of the travel lanes for at least the segment from Fletcher to Bears. As far as ADA, of course, upgrading all of those crossings to ADA compliant crossings. Some signage and pavement markings, as well as roadway and drainage improvements, and lighting and improvements at the signalized intersections in those locations. Just some of the spot recommendations. We have some at each of the intersections there. A couple of possibilities for bulb outs, new pedestrian crossings, improvements to the drainage structures, and the right turn geometries, as well as some reducing some of those radii with truck aprons. Again, a couple of additions of sidewalks and those connections as well. Moving on to Fletcher, some of the top crash locations. This was, by the way, from Armenia to Nebraska. Some of those top crash locations are at Nebraska, Florida Avenue, North Boulevard, and Rome. Rear end and angle crashes were a big part of the issue here. People use this corridor for all of the various activities that they do, but the intersection improvements and the high-speed traffic, as well as access control, were some of the big issues that came up there. So in terms of improvements on this corridor, again, a lower target speed, 35 miles per hour, signal timing and phasing, so having the flashing yellow areas and the signal progression, additional roadway lighting, as well as traffic signal backplates and pavement and crosswalk markings. And some of the sidewalks need some maintenance, and there are some proposals for raised medians to limit some of those turn movements. Just going through a couple of the intersections, you can see some of the at Armenia, excuse me, the additional raised median as well as the turn lane and those crosswalk legs on the southwest corner there. Moving on to Lynn Turner Road. This is from Ehrlich to Gunn Highway. Just some of the crash data here. It is just a 2-lane section. The posted speed limit is 45, handling just over 20,000 vehicles a day. Some of the concerns are the high speeds, unsafe turn movements, and poor lighting. And in terms of travel trends, there was not, I do not believe anybody who walked or biked along this corridor responded. So in terms of corridor-wide improvements, again, a 35-mile-per-hour target speed, so that's a reduction. Additional roadway lighting, and crosswalks on the side streets, as well as a wide sidewalk option. Couple of intersection improvements here, raised channelized right turn islands, some access enhancements in the form of left turn lanes to allow for the safer turning movements, and enhanced pedestrian crossings. Moving on to Sheldon Road from Hillsborough to Waters. We have the fatal and incapacitating crashes. Woodlake Boulevard had the highest of any, but Memorial and Waters also high numbers. Some of those trends, again, where those crashes took place. And then a little bit of the community input. Nobody really thought it was great for walking and biking, and even for driving only received 3 stars, but still mostly daily or weekly users in that survey responding. So looking at some of those countermeasures, we have these divided into 3 columns: safe people, safe streets, and safe operations. The operations refers to signalization as well as lighting and some of those signage operations that we can change. The safe people, high visibility crossings, wider bike lanes, bus stops, and shade trees near those bus stops, which is more of a suggestion for implementation. And is enhancing those trail connections, particularly where the Town and Country Greenway crosses Sheldon and then connects up to the Upper Tampa Bay Trail. Just a couple more recommendations: reducing the curb radii, bike lanes, increased width of bike lanes, decreased width of traffic lanes, higher visibility crossings, green bike lanes where those conflict zones are, pedestrian-oriented street lighting, upgrading the crossings to ADA compliant crossings, as well as transit stop enhancements and a resulting speed limit reduction due to those improvements. Just going through a couple of these, you can see the proposed concrete medians for traffic calming and for reducing some of those turn movements, enhanced signage, as well as some additional upgrades to those crossings and the use of quick curb where possible to shorten some of those crossing movements for pedestrians as well as others. Again, just continuing on with those paint and roadway markings, as well as the trail crossing, which I mentioned before, and additional signage related to it. Again, just some more of those related to extended school zones, traffic calming, and narrowing the median openings. And this just moves through some of the same similar recommendations moving up the corridor at Crown and Woodlake Boulevard. And finally, as we get to the Waters Avenue intersection, leading pedestrian intervals are proposed, speed limit signs, trail connectivity and directional signs, as well as no turn on red, and then the bike lanes potential for the installation of red light cameras to reduce some of the red light running, and using the potential of using trees for traffic calming. All right, moving on to 78th Street. one of the big issues was transit in this corridor, so you'll see a lot of changes related to that. Just to point out, Palm River Road, which recently received some upgrades, we've proposed a couple of additional things just because this intersection did account for 1/3 of crashes on the corridors, such as extending the curbs, but using some possibly mountable or just paint solutions so that we don't restrict freight movement. And we'll be seeing some pedestrian refuge islands as well as street lighting as we move forward in this. So some of the short-term recommendations on 78th Street. I believe we actually had looked at reducing the speed limit from 45 to 40, but we do have 35 in here, so I'll have to make sure that's correct. But that's accomplished through narrowing the travel lanes and providing an outside buffer, relocating some cross-street signage and stop bars to provide better sight distance, installing raised landscape islands and mid-block crossings. As you can see in the picture here, we proposed a mid-block crossing. We've actually proposed 4 of them, but just relocating those bus stops slightly to be directly across from each other where users could use those crossings more easily and not run across 100 feet down the road where the current bus stop is. So in the midterm, possibly reconstructing and widening sidewalks by paving buffer space and enhancing the street lighting as well are suggested here. We did also explore an alternative concept, which would involve changing this from a 5-lane section to a 3-lane section with buffered bike lanes, which is included in the report. Just a couple of those improvements. These are similar improvements in Jacksonville and what those could look like installed here. So moving on to Gibsonton Drive, which is also Boyette Road. The proposal is to reduce the speed limit from 45 to 40, accomplished through narrowing the travel lanes and expanding the outside buffer, filling the sidewalk gaps, providing crosswalks and ped signals at all intersection approaches, extending median separators at intersection to provide pedestrian refuges where feasible. And I'll get into the I-75 ramps in a second, but restricting left turns as well as restricting unsignalized median openings and installing some illuminated cross-street signage on mast arms to help those movements. Just an example of the existing typical section and the interim proposed. You can see on the bottom right there, a multi-use trail is proposed. That is, as well as the reduced lane widths here. So looking at some of those midterm and long-term recommendations, one of the long-term recommendations is widening Gibsonton Drive to 6 lanes where it is currently 4 from I-75 to US 301. So what that would look like in the long term is a similar section. You can still see the shared use path on the bottom right. The reason that it was set so far off in the previous one I showed you was to allow for that widening, as well as you can still see in this the reduced travel lanes, enhanced sidewalk facilities on the north side, which would be the left in the bottom picture. Just moving on to the I-75 interchange here. So some of the countermeasures, pedestrian crossing paths along the interchange. We have seen pedestrians and cyclists crossing I-75 on this in the shoulder every time I've been out there, and on Google Street View, it also is visible. There is a project at this to reconstruct the northeast portion, at least in this interchange. So adding signalization where there isn't and enhancing the street lighting in this interchange are part of the recommendations. Moving on to Mango Road, these are some of the existing conditions. You can see some of the drainage issues, some sidewalk gaps, some broken sidewalks, and drop-offs along the shoulder of that road. Some of the one project that is programmed in the CIP is a roundabout at Old Hillsborough Avenue. It's alternative 6 from the CIP report on that. there is the only additional recommendation here is adding speed feedback signs due to the grade change coming into that. Again, looking at maintenance on the roadway, updating those pavement markings and drainage improvements. And just here you can see some of those additional drainage issues. Also just lighting, traffic calming, and a few intersection improvements, which I will get into in a moment. For the pedestrian improvements on the right side here, you can see those gaps marked 1 and 2. The one marked 1 is from the Walmart to the Mango Park there. It's a short segment, but based on the well-worn path, you can see it is getting used quite a bit, and is a pathway that's used by pedestrians pretty frequently. Moving on to those intersection improvements, these are the main intersections here, but I'll be going through them one by one. This is at Clay Pit Road and is a pretty good example of what is proposed. Those repainted crosswalks, signal backplates, enhanced curb and gutter, and adding sidewalks for those connections to the crosswalks. Here's one at Canterbury Drive with a turn lane, as well as some additional curb and gutter to help stop people from going onto the grass around this, where the curb drops off, and to allow that through traffic, as well as create a safe place for people to make that turn. Moving down towards the Walmart driveways, this is the southernmost Walmart driveway. We did receive some comments from this, so I think if you can see the road to the bottom left, that does access some single family homes. We are going to adjust that to only carry the median, I think, down to here, but we still need to have some consultations on that to allow that left turn in. But it would still have the benefit of allowing a right in and right out only from the Walmart. That would not totally restrict the ability to left turn out of that Walmart, because there is a entrance a little further north, which we can see here marked as the 4 on the right there. We would also be proposing an added turn lane to allow for that traffic to more safely turn into the Walmart there. Moving on to 15th Street, this is between Fowler and Fletcher. There are a large multifamily or a large number of multifamily dwellings within the area, as well as supporting commercial. These are some of the pictures of the existing conditions. You can see some cracked sidewalks and some sidewalk gaps, as well as a ton of users. This was the highest route for ADA users by heart. Just a few of the improvements that the county is currently putting in: raised crosswalks to increase the visibility of pedestrians, as well as filling in some of those sidewalk gaps. And this is just another page from the plans from that project, showing where those are in relation to transit shelters and how the rapid flashing beacons are being installed along with those. Just a couple of alternatives that we had looked at. This one looks at adding sharrows on 15th Street, shared lane markings. The traffic volumes may not support that, so we are looking at some additional concepts there. And then a little bit longer term concept that would involve moving the curbs, adding buffered bicycle lanes, as well as still having, of course, the sidewalks in that area. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know that was a lot. We have bumped this out for board approval to January to give us a little time to work through some of the comments we've received. But again, happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Ray. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions? All right, I don't see any. Oh, okay. I'll call that question.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for your presentation. Very interesting. This project is really good. I did have a question about relocating the bus stop on 10th Street. As you may know, HART is doing a service modification, and that will go in January. And part of that, we have to move anyone that heard about this?
I didn't quite catch all of that, but I believe you mentioned the relocation of the bus stops on 78th Street. Was that it, Nicole?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, we know that there has been some consolidation of the ones south of this corridor. And we did talk to Justin Willits about that, but any of that certainly would need to be coordinated with Hart and during the implementation.
Okay, so what I would say with that is that Justin and I will probably follow up with you on that because we are going to be, we have to do some stuff in January. Maybe that's something that we can work on. So,
Thank you.
thank you for the presentation.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve, Johnson.
We have a motion from Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Tony. Anyone presenting this item is approved? Anyone disagree? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the 2021 calendar. Sarah?
Yes, all right. Let's see.
Sarah, I've made you the presenter again.
All right, thank you, Wade. Okay, can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. This is the proposed 2021 calendar for the committee meetings. We have sort of reorganized the format, or I guess the schedule of the meetings, or how they're organized each month. And as you'll see, the TAC is now scheduled to be towards the beginning of the month, with the MPO board a couple weeks later in the middle of the month. Do we have any questions or discussions on the proposed dates for the committee at this point?
Sarah, can you maybe make that a little bigger?
Excuse me?
Can you make that a little bigger? It's kind of hard to see.
Oh, make it bigger? Sorry. Okay. Can you see that?
Much better.
All right. So, all right, at this point, if there's any comments or questions regarding the schedule, please let me know. Otherwise, we are asking that you do approve the 2021 calendar.
Do we have any questions? Okay, well, if not, we have a motion.
Jake Collins, motion to approve the 2021 calendar.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second, Leland Dykus. So we have a motion from Jay and a second from Leland. As our protocol, anyone opposed to this motion? Seeing none, the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a status report from T-BARTA, NASA, and MPO.
And this is Brian Bassar from T-BARTA. Allison, I didn't know if you want to say a few words before I started.
No, Brian, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello, I'm Brian Bassaro, Principal Planner of T-BARTA. Back in July, we completed an innovative transit technology study. If you go to the next slide. This was a high-level look at 3 technologies: urban aerial gondolas, air taxis, and Hyperloop. You know, air taxi service is not new. We have it today using helicopters. The problem with helicopter air taxi service is that it's noisy, It's expensive and it uses fossil fuel. What's changed has been the development of electric vertical takeoff and landing, or eVTOL aircraft. If you go to the next slide. These are battery operated aircraft. There's over 100 companies that are in various stages of developing an eVTOL aircraft. A lot of them are small startups that probably won't survive. However, there's a couple of eVTOL developers that are well financed and will likely get an aircraft certified. There's basically 3 types of eVTOL aircraft. There's lift and cruise, which uses 2 propulsion systems, one for takeoff and landing and another propulsion system for cruising. There's vectored thrust, which uses tilted thrusters similar to a Harrier jump jet, if you've ever seen one of those. And then there's multi-rotor, which is basically a large-scale drone. The ranges of these aircraft vary. Multi-rotor air taxis have a more limited range and would likely service trips within a city, whereas air taxis that use lift and cruise and vectored thrust have a greater range and would be able to connect cities, for example, from Tampa to St. Pete or even Tampa to Sarasota. Next slide. So the study looked at possible connections within the Tampa Bay area for air taxis. So for example, USF to downtown Tampa, Tampa Airport to downtown St. Pete and Clearwater. Next slide. Now, what, if any, role TBARTA should have in air taxis is something we're still trying to figure out. Even on our board, there is not unanimous opinion about it. One of the recommendations, though, from the study was that we should collaborate with NASA on work that they're doing with local communities to model vertiport locations. NASA is developing a regional modeling and simulation tool that evaluates and scores potential vertiport locations for air taxis. It's a GIS tool that breaks a city or county into 50 meter grid squares and overlays various layers of GIS data. What NASA does is they work with local partners to identify which GIS layers they want to include in the tool and how much weight they want to assign to each GIS layer. And so TBARTA and the Hillsborough MPO have been working with NASA for about the last month or so on customizing this tool for Hillsborough County. Roger Matthey in a moment is going to talk a little bit more about that tool. However, if you go to the next slide, the last thing I want to mention before I hand it over to Roger is that TBARTA is going to be hosting a free webinar on December 4th from 12 to 1 on the topic of advanced air mobility. You can go to our website to register. I think there may be one more slide. If you could switch, is there one more? This webinar, it's specifically geared towards planners. We're doing this webinar in collaboration with a nonprofit group called Community Air Mobility Initiative, and they will present on the topic of how to integrate advanced air mobility into metropolitan transportation systems. And that was my part, and I guess I'll hand it over to Roger for the rest. I'm sorry. You can keep flipping.
Next slide. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, my name is Roger Matthey. I'm the GIS project manager with the MPO. We are working on this project with TBARTA and NASA. We are in the very early preliminary stages of studying various places on where to place an air taxi or vertiport. In this slide, I created a fishnet that our partner from NASA, Dr. Sheath, has plugged into the simulation tool. There's a lot of data that we're using to plug into this tool. And in this slide, the bright colored or heated areas that you see would be suitable for an air taxi site. Next slide. Using the suitability values, a vertiport location is selected. In this slide, as an example, we selected a spot on the parking garage next to Emily Arena. You can click on the icon and the blue or green box that pops up shows you some of the factors that we look at, such as fire stations, hospitals, land uses, zoning, being near or on the power grid. These air taxis are going to be electric and probably need a charging station to be plugged into. Next slide, please. In this slide, as an example of the simulation tool, this is applied beyond Hillsborough County, our current test site. Here you can see the path of the air taxis moving about between some major cities here in Florida. This model is also being developed in Ohio and Los Angeles right now. Next slide, please. Finally, here we have the timeline. We started this project in the first week of November of 2020, and we discussed all of the data and GIS layers being used. And we hope to come back to you in February to demonstrate the simulation tool. And I would like to thank you for allowing me to present this to you today. And does anybody have any questions?
Okay, any questions from the committee?
I just had a question just real quick. What is the benefit of an air taxi? What's the goal? What would be the goal of benefit to Hillsborough County air taxi? And what the objective would be? It seems like a very limited number of individuals would be transported to the states. And what's the end goal of looking at those air taxis?
I don't know if the question was directed to me, but I'm having difficulty hearing the question.
And who asked the question?
This is Leland Dyson.
Thank you.
What's the general idea? What are we looking to accomplish here with air taxi? Part of the transportation.
Well, to understand, like the air taxi developers, these are in the private sector. This is not a public sector endeavor. I mean, it's basically an air version of Uber and Lyft.
Sarah, is it okay if I respond to that question as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Allison Ye. I am an executive planner with the MPO and also working with Roger on this project. So from a transportation planning standpoint, we're looking at this as one of the many transportation options, you know, our toolkit of options when we look at different modes of transportation. As far as what the MPO and the county is getting out of this particular exercise, NASA's developing this rather sophisticated sighting tool database, and we're working with them as we provide them GIS layers to pilot test areas in Hillsborough County. At the end of this process, they're going to actually hand the tool over to us so that we're able to play with it ourselves and use it for different aspects. So one thing that we found really helpful with this tool, for example, is there is data loaded into all the corridors, for example, for noise impact, and we're able to look at different sites and what the noise impact is on each of the major corridors. And when we can then say, plug a site and say, what will air traffic add to that? There's a lot of useful information in this process, and it's not costing us consultant money to develop this tool. We think it will be a benefit to the community as overall. So after we get it done in approximately this month time frame, we hope to share this with, for example, the land use planners and the local planners to refine the sites, but also to think about, with a tool of this type, what type of layers should we add to it? It's actually, we wish we could share more information about the details with you, but NASA is going ahead and patenting this tool and before they give it to us. So in February, we'll be able to talk to you about it in more detail.
Okay, I think Nicole had a question too.
So I had a question about what would the average cost be per ride using their service? So say someone was going from Brandon to West Shore, what kind of cost would they be looking at? And then also my next question is this a service where they would have to be there an hour ahead of time to then use it? I'm just wondering how the timing would work on this. I don't know if you guys are there yet, but just some questions that need to ask.
Ryan, I think I can answer, but jump in if you have more details. I couldn't hear very clearly, but what I think I heard was, Nicole, you're interested in have we gotten down to the parcel level, like what type of parcels we're identifying? Is that right? And then 2 was, no, okay, I didn't hear. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so my question was, what would the average cost be to the user? So say we're going from Brandon to West Shore, how much would that cost? And then what is like the prep time? Like, would they have to be there an hour before, like if you're going to the airport or something? Just kind of get an idea of how the service would be used.
So I think those type of, right now, this tool is focused on finding the proper site for vertiports. The operational issues and the kind of lead time to ride and the cost per ride. I think, Brian, you can elaborate if you know more, but the Urban Air Mobility Initiative and those type of operational issues are not kind of strictly part of this particular patent they're working on, but part of the Urban Air Mobility Initiatives. And they're looking at that. I don't think they've gotten to that level of detail yet.
Yeah, I mean, the only information that I can share with you is information that we've heard from presentations that T-BARTA has gotten from eVTOL developers such as Lilium and Whisk. I can tell you that their service model, what they're proposing is that the rates would be comparable to a taxi ride. Now, it's probably going to be more expensive than that in the beginning because you're, at least with Lilium, they're planning on having a pilot on board. Their long-term goal is to go to autonomous operations to bring the cost down. But initially, they're going to have a pilot on board, so it probably will be more expensive than a cab ride.
Right.
In terms of your arrival time, from what we've heard in presentations, it would be similar to scheduling a ride on an Uber or Lyft, where you show up, say, like 15 minutes ahead of your ride.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, appreciate the presentation. We'll move on to the next item. Next item is school business and new business. And any old business or new business from the committee? Sarah, how are they going to handle the joint TAC meeting next month?
So as for the joint meeting next month, at this point, we do not have any action items. So we are at this point planning on having it fully virtual.
And it would just be twice as many people, say, or whatever the numbers are?
Yeah, so because to have a quorum, we wouldn't be able to facilitate both committees at once. So at this point, we're just going to have a fully virtual meeting with no action items.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the committee? All right, that's it. And we're adjourned. Thank you.
All right. And if for those of you that are in the meeting room, if you could just take a wipe and wipe down your area, and then I'll come back in a little bit and do it as well. Thank you all so much for coming in person as well.
Yes, and if you can please log out and shut down your devices, that would be helpful also. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.